Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the air shift? Not because something dangerous happened, not because something good happened, but because someone looked at you, and somehow, you knew your whole life was about to change. Seraphina Morel didn't believe in that. She didn't believe in fate. She didn't believe in soulmates. She definitely didn't believe in alpha werewolves dropping to one knee for a girl they'd never spoken to. And yet, 11 seconds after walking into that throne room, Alpha Kael Voss was on his knee, in front of his entire court. For her, a servant. 3 hours later, that same Alpha was collapsed on the floor of his chambers, poisoned. And every single person in that palace was pointing at her. Let's go back. Back to before the accusations, before the throne room, before everything fell apart. Seraphina Morel was 23 years old, and she had been property of the Voss Court since she was 9. Not a slave, technically. The court had a very specific word for what she was. Provisional servant. Which sounds almost dignified until you learn what it actually means. Her mother had known something the court wanted kept quiet, and instead of sharing it, she'd stayed silent. So the court took her daughter instead, as insurance, as punishment, as a reminder that silence has a price. Seraphina had learned early on not to be angry about it. Anger got you noticed. Getting noticed was dangerous. Dangerous meant losing the small freedoms she'd managed to carve out over 14 years. Her job tonight was simple. Bring the wine to the throne room, set it on the table, don't make eye contact, leave. She'd done it 100 times. She could do it in her sleep. Except, this time, she felt it the second she crossed the threshold. A pressure. Not painful, not threatening. Just heavy. Like the room itself was holding its breath. She kept her eyes down, focused on the tray, walked the exact route she always walked. Set the wine down. Turned to leave. Stop. One word and the entire court went silent. Not the polite kind of silent. The terrified kind. Seraphina stopped. Because you don't ignore the Alpha. Nobody ignored the Alpha. She turned around slowly, and for the first time in 14 years of serving this court, she looked directly at Kael Voss. He was already standing. Which, if you knew anything about Kael, you'd know that was strange. He didn't stand during court. Not for anyone. Standing meant something mattered. He was walking toward her. Cutting straight across the room like every other person in it simply didn't exist. And Seraphina's brain was doing that thing where it runs through every possible mistake she could have made. Did I spill something? Did I look at someone wrong? Did I? He stopped 2 feet away from her. And then, Alpha Kael Voss went to one knee. Okay. I need you to understand what that means. In the paranormal world, in this world, an alpha kneeling is not a casual gesture. It's a bond proposal. It means, I choose you. Above everyone. Above everything. It's permanent. It's sacred. And it had never, not once in recorded history, been done for a servant. The court wasn't just shocked. They were horrified. And Seraphina? She wasn't flattered. She wasn't touched. She was absolutely, completely terrified. Because she knew, better than anyone in that room, what it meant when powerful people decided they wanted something from you. It never ended well for the person with nothing. 3 hours. That's all it took. 3 hours after that throne room moment. 2 guards came sprinting down the corridor to find the head healer. Kael wasn't in the throne room. He wasn't in the war chamber. He wasn't anywhere he was supposed to be. They found him in his private chambers. On the floor. The wine glass had shattered beside him. What was left of the liquid inside was dark, too dark. Wrong color entirely. His pulse was there, barely. His breathing was shallow. His eyes were open but seeing nothing. Healer Oren, who had served 3 alphas and thought he'd seen everything, went very, very still when he checked the residue on the glass. This isn't a standard toxin, he said. This is veil poison. The room got colder somehow. Headguard Roran turned slowly. Veil poison. You're sure? I've only seen it twice in 40 years. I'm sure. Roran looked at the glass, then at the door, then at the guard standing nearest to him. Who was with him tonight? Silence. Then, just the servant girl. The provisional one. She brought the wine. They came for Seraphina 20 minutes later. No questions, no investigation, no conversation. Just 2 guards, a set of chains, and a cell in the lower wing that hadn't been used in years. The cold didn't bother her. Cold she knew, cold she'd lived with. What was harder, what sat in her chest like a stone, was knowing exactly how this story ended. She'd watched it happen to others. Accusation first. Truth never. In the Voss Court, if you were already at the bottom, you didn't get the benefit of the doubt, you got the blame. The worst part wasn't the chains. The worst part was that she understood it. She understood why they pointed at her. She was convenient, she was powerless. She had been in that room. Understanding something doesn't make it hurt less. It just makes you feel more alone. But here's the thing about Seraphina. She didn't just sit there. She thought. She replayed every second of that evening. The throne room, the walk back, the corridor. There was a moment, between leaving the throne room and delivering the second tray to the side hall, when someone had stopped her. Casual, friendly even. A man in a black coat with a practiced smile. Davin Velian, son of House Velian, a friend of the court who'd been visiting for 6 months. He'd asked her something meaningless, which corridor led to the East Gallery, like he didn't already know, and while he talked, his hand had rested on the tray cart. Just for a moment. Seraphina had thought nothing of it at the time. Now, she thought of nothing else. Because she also knew one more thing. That morning, Kael had formally rejected Davin's proposal, an alliance through marriage to Kael's younger sister. Rejected it publicly, without softening it, without apology. Davin Velian had smiled through the whole thing. The kind of smile that doesn't mean happiness. The kind that means, this isn't over. Seraphina sat in the dark with this information, and a choice. Because here's what made it complicated. Her mother had been a healer, an ancient practices healer, the kind who knew things most people had forgotten. Including, and Seraphina had found this in an old journal at 16, the formula for a compound that could neutralize veil poison, and its dark counterpart, which meant, technically, on paper, in the eyes of someone looking for a reason, Seraphina had the knowledge to make it. She'd never touched it, never had the ingredients, never even told anyone the journal existed. But try explaining that from a jail cell when the Alpha is on the floor upstairs. If she stayed quiet, Davin walked free. If she told the truth, she handed them another reason to convict her. This is the kind of choice that defines people. Not the easy ones, the impossible ones. Oren worked through the night. By 3 a.m., he had stabilized the Alpha enough to matter. By 4 a.m., Kael's eyes opened. Oren was at his side before Kael had fully processed where he was. Don't move yet. Your system needs... Where is she? Not what happened. Not how long was I out. Not am I going to be okay. Where is she? Oren went quiet for a moment. The servant girl. Seraphina. She's been... I know what she's been accused of. Kael sat up slowly, Oren reaching out to steady him, knowing better than to stop him. Where is she right now? Lower wing. Cell 4. He stood up. Here's the part where I tell you something about Kael Voss that his court didn't know. Not the full picture, anyway. They knew he was powerful. They knew he was controlled. They knew he made decisions without flinching. What they didn't know was that the control cost him something. Every single day. Kael had lost his parents at 17, taken the title at 17, learned very fast that emotion was a weakness people would use against him. So he buried it. 14 years of burying it. And then he'd walked into a throne room, seen a girl with her eyes down and her spine straight, and felt something crack open in his chest like a fault line. Not love, not yet. Recognition. Like meeting someone who lived the same kind of quiet war you did. The bond pull was already there, low and constant, like a compass needle swinging toward north. He could feel her fear through it. She hadn't accepted the proposal, obviously, but the connection was there regardless. A half-open door. And what was coming through that door was terror. Not the panicked kind, the exhausted kind. The kind that comes from someone who's been afraid for a very long time. He made it to the lower wing in 4 minutes. The two guards at her cell door took one look at his face and stepped aside without a word. When the door opened, Seraphina was already on her feet, expecting a judge, expecting a verdict, expecting the worst. What she got was the Alpha. In his bloodless shirt from the night before, one hand wrapped in a healer's bandage, looking like he had absolutely no business being vertical, standing in her doorway. She didn't speak first. "I didn't do it." She said it anyway, because 14 years of being guilty by association had trained her to say it first, even when she knew no one was listening. "I know." Seraphina blinked. "You know." "Veil poison requires ancient bloodline access," Kael said. His voice was rough. "From the night, from the poison, from something harder to name. You don't have that. Your record in this court goes back to when you were 9 years old. There's nothing there." He stepped inside, stopped, deliberately, near the door, far enough that she had space, like he understood, somehow, that the last thing she needed was someone crowding her. "If there was a risk in that room, it was my responsibility to control, not yours to anticipate." Seraphina was staring at him. You're saying this is your fault." "I'm saying the court was wrong to move on you without an investigation." He met her eyes. "And I'm saying I should have asked more questions before they did. An Alpha just admitted fault to me." "You sound surprised." "I've been in this court for 14 years. Yes, I'm surprised." Then Seraphina made her choice. She told him everything. About Davin's hand on the cart, about the corridor stop, about the timing, the rejection that morning, the poison that night. And then, the harder part, her mother's journal, the formula, the fact that she knew how it was made, even if she'd never made it. She waited for his expression to shift, for the suspicion to come back, for the door to feel like a trap again. Kael was quiet for a long moment. "Why are you telling me that last part?" "Because it's true," she said, simply. "And if you're going to find out anyway, I'd rather it come from me. I could use it against you." "You could. But you're also the only person who actually listened tonight," she said. "So, I'm making a judgment call." He moved to the wall and called for the guard. "Remove the restraints." Roran, who had been hovering near the door with the deeply uncomfortable energy of a man who knew he'd made an error, stepped in. "Alpha, with all due respect, until the investigation is... remove them, now." The chains came off. And then, before Seraphina could figure out what to do with her newly free hands, Kael shrugged off his coat and held it out to her. Not dramatically, not with a speech, just held it out. "You've been in here for hours. It's cold." She took it. Kael's senior advisor, Marin, had been doing his own quiet work through the night. Marin was 71 years old and had the specific kind of intelligence that looks like nothing until it suddenly has you cornered. He'd noticed something. Small thing. Easy to miss. Davin Velian's boots. There was a particular kind of dust on them. Fine, reddish, mineral-heavy, that only came from one part of the palace. The lower archive corridor. Specifically the section that housed sealed storage from the old court. Specifically, according to the inventory ledger Marin had pulled at 2 a.m., the section where a case of veil poison ingredients had been locked away since the last Alpha's reign. The seal had been broken. Marin brought this to Kael at dawn. Kael brought it to the full court by 7 a.m. Davin denied it first. He was good at that, the calm denial, the slightly offended expression, the "what kind of man do you take me for" energy. Kael let him finish. Then he placed Marin's report on the table. The inventory records, the boot print analysis, a witness, a junior servant, who had seen Davin in that corridor 2 nights before. "You wanted an alliance. I said no. So you decided that if you couldn't have what you wanted through negotiation," he paused, "you'd take it through grief. My court would be destabilized, my family vulnerable, and you'd come back in 6 months with a better offer, to a court desperate enough to accept it." Davin's composed expression finally cracked. "Not into remorse. Into calculation. You can't prove. I already have." Davin Velian was removed from the palace within the hour. The details of what happened after that are, let's say, above our pay grade. What matters is this. The court that had put Seraphina in chains the night before was now standing in formal assembly, watching her name be cleared. Publicly, on record, with Kael's full authority behind it. The same court that had decided she was guilty in about 12 minutes was now watching their Alpha formally correct the record. You could feel the discomfort from across the room. Good. That night, Seraphina was back in her room. Still technically servant quarters, still small, still the same 4 walls she'd had for 14 years. But something was different about the air in it. She was trying to figure out what, when someone knocked. She opened the door. Kael, the most powerful paranormal being in the territory, knocking on a servant's door, standing in the hallway like a man who'd walked all this way with great confidence and was now slightly uncertain about what came next. She didn't say anything. She just waited. I wanted to apologize, he said, properly, not in front of the court. You already apologized. That was formal. He looked at her. This is me. Seraphina leaned against the doorframe. She studied him the way she studied everything. Carefully, like she was reading for the thing underneath the thing. The proposal, she said finally, in the throne room. Was that real? She nodded slowly, like she'd already half known. You don't know me. No, he agreed. But I've been in rooms full of people my entire adult life, he said, and I've never once felt less alone than I did in that 11 seconds. He didn't push, didn't ask for an answer, didn't fill the silence with reassurance. He just said, I'll ask again, when you're ready, if you're ever ready. A pause. I'm not going anywhere. Seraphina stood in her doorway for a long moment. She thought about 9-year-old her, brought to this court, labeled, reduced. She thought about last night, the chains, the cold, the absolute certainty that no one was coming. And she thought about a man who knelt in 11 seconds, and then spent a poisoned night making sure she didn't take the fall for it. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She stepped back from the doorway. Just slightly. Just enough. Seraphina Morel had spent 14 years in this court as something to be managed. In one night, she'd been proposed to, accused, defended, and seen. Actually seen. Maybe that wasn't everything. Maybe it wasn't even enough. Yet. But it was the first time in 14 years that she'd ended a night without feeling smaller than when she started it. The poison in that palace was never hers. It belonged to the people who convinced themselves that power meant they never had to answer for what they chose. She was done paying for other people's choices. Starting tonight,